Yosemite Sam and Blackjack Shellac were my first capitalists. Make of that what you will. Anyway, this poem is called Red Candles, Rabbit, Tar Pit. We should have turned left at Albuquerque, and it's always Albuquerque. But now we lurch towards Pittsburgh, PA, and isn't it always Pittsburgh? We plunge in the dense walls of fog once more. You grip the wheel, I cough, sad reproach. That's all. This next poem, I stole a line sort of from the Charge of the Life Brigade. I think it's about consumerism and ideology, but you can decide what it's about to you. It's called One to a Customer. All in the parking lot of death, the 600 stood, baking in the sun like suspect product kept beneath a heating lamp. Their goal, the chicken of liberty on white American bread, slathered in the mayonnaise of corporate freedom with cruelly sliced potato wedges, randomly piled high on the right. One per customer, the chant went up, passed down the line assembled there, and each felt glad he had answered the call, to be a collective individual, and buy the taste of pride, but not, of course, that kind of pride. For that was another world, far too individual and vile, like white sauce on your face and a tight collective of hens. So intent on their goal, none saw the zombie horde, till it descended on them all, and ate rather light, but to a customer, one. And we who lived to tell you were elsewhere that day, avoiding Cluck Kill Bee in the mani-pedis of liberty. And this next poem was initially inspired by a cat that used to live somewhere over yonder and sat on the steps of this house just at the base of Ontario Street for what seemed like 30 years. I guess it couldn't have been, because the longest lived cat was actually 38, and there aren't a heck of a lot of those. But anyway, it sort of inspired the beginning of this poem. It's called The World's Oldest Cat Explains It All to You. The world's oldest cat, on the world's oldest steps, to the world's oldest house, by the welcoming waters, breathes in sleepy, rasping purrs, and shows his belly to the painting sun, that dyes his belly to orange and gray, and turns his ginger to a faded tan. But he thinks to himself, and to you as well, I was carved from the stones that made those steps. My name is the deed that owns this house, and the welcoming waters carved those stones. My kittens left the first playful concrete steps in the streets that cross the front of this house, and their kittens are buried in the yard of the house, and some were drowned in the welcoming waters. And when I pass with another cat's son here, I am part of the steps, and the house, and the sea. Someday you will pass by and I will not be here, but I will linger lengthy in your heart and your mind. The world's oldest cat, on the world's oldest steps, to the world's oldest house, by the welcoming waters. This next poem was inspired, I think, it's been a while, by one of Yoko Ono's instructions in her book, Grapefruit. It's called A Photograph of the Wind. When you take a photograph of the wind, bear in mind your responsibility. As long as you watch it through your brown eyes, it seems a benign puff of common air. But once you apply your brownie spellcraft, you have entered a wholly different world. That spreading chestnut will spread itself thin, limbs flailing in a declared hurricane. Those houses that were so safe crack open and reveal their treasures now to be trash. Those rivers that babbled fond tales to you now froth white and rabid and scream of floods. So put down the phone or the camera and think what you want to say or convey. Photographs are not paintings or sculptures. They scratch and they fade. They flap in the wind. It is your place and your time to decide what fate or damage or frame you will fix. This next poem is inspired by a certain orange-skinned former president. The shame will be yours. A chauvinist who cannot seem to see that being the executor of the state's will makes him responsible for seeing to its deaths. Not the only, but one out of many. He takes a bended knee to the bated breath of society's targets, and one who must answer. Inflict a few haiku on you, just because. Surly seagulls sulk, practicing social distance till your head is turned. And interestingly, Bruce's earlier story about crows comes to mind in this one. Don't find carrion. Attempted murder of crows. They don't find this droll. And this was inspired by an actual two geese I saw flying, making a shape that wasn't a V. Two illiterate geese don't know how to make a V. In its stead, they A. And this one was inspired by the day after the festival here in 2018. All during the festival, all these seagulls were landing and stealing croissants and donuts and stuff. Well, I was down here the morning after, and there were all these seagulls sort of stomping around, looking upset. The festival's done. Seagulls stomp around keening, "Where is my croissant?" Multi-track chirping fills up nature's 48. Bounce it down for joy. And this one was inspired by White Mountain of all places. Sparrows would order, had they money, ice cream cones. They lack, so eat crumbs. And I think I was vaguely thinking of Leonard Cohen with this one. It's called The Piano Cannot Forget. The piano cannot forget. It is being played out the window of a cold, consuming, consumptive attic, so the skaters below can cut its score on the ice, for spring to transcribe wrongly the antecedents want. The player cannot forget that he will not see the buds of the trees he has played into being again, and the stiff-lipped bark will not say a word of thanks, but the malady lingers on, the artist's fond curse. And this last poem was inspired by a family medical crisis a couple of months ago. It's called, and the title is from the Emily Dickinson poem, in case you're wondering, "Because You Would Not Stop for Him." Death picks up the teacup you thoughtlessly brought him, the contents slightly weak, but tasty and sweet, and heads for the door, not calling back in that faint voice that it's really been lovely, he will come back someday. He takes up his walking stick from the box to the corridor, that odd, pointed cane with the handle of steel, and takes leave, for now, with his typical silence, how tall and dark to pass silent as graves. You look down, tisking at the rings on the table, your delicate, strong, mahogany one, then realize those were left by others' passage. He left no mark but his visit this time. You mark it down to a social occasion and a small reminder to keep in touch. He will call by again, and more than once, and he will not be coming for tea that day. That's all.